The envelope sat on the marble kitchen counter like a death certificate. Simone Patterson's hands trembled as she stared at the familiar sight, crisp $100 bills wrapped in a bank band, exactly $100,000. But this time something was different. This time, tucked beneath the money, was a bank transfer confirmation for $10 million. $10 million. The same amount Damon had paid her every time before. She closed her eyes, remembering the first time she'd found such an envelope 6 years ago. She'd been 28, naive, desperately in love with the man who'd swept her off her feet during her senior year at Spelman College. Back then she thought the money was an apology. A gesture. A promise that it would never happen again. Mama? 8-year-old Camille's voice drifted from the living room where she was watching cartoons, her gap-toothed smile brightening every corner of their Atlanta mansion. When's Daddy coming home? Simone's heart cracked a little more. How could she explain that Daddy wouldn't be coming home tonight because he was too busy with his assistant? Again. The same assistant he'd promised to fire after the last $10 million payment 18 months ago. The front door clicked open and Damon's confident footsteps echoed across the hardwood floors. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing his tailored Tom Ford suit, his dark skin gleaming with the confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences. "You found it," he said, loosening his tie. "I figured we'd handle this the same way we always do." Simone looked at him, really looked at him. At 38, Damon Patterson was still devastatingly handsome. 6'3", broad shoulders, the kind of smile that had convinced her to drop out of her master's program to become his wife. He was worth over $200 million, built from his grandfather's construction company and his own real estate empire. The same way. Simone's voice came out stronger than she felt. "You mean the way where you cheat, pay me to stay quiet and promise it won't happen again?" Damon's expression softened, the practiced look of contrition he'd perfected over the years. "Baby, you know how much I love you and Camille. This thing with Yasmin, it doesn't mean anything. It's just physical. You're my wife. You're my world." "Am I?" Simone picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. $60 million over 6 affairs. $60 million to stay silent, to smile at charity galas, to pretend her marriage wasn't a sham. Or am I just the most expensive escort in Atlanta? The words hung in the air like a slap. Damon's jaw tightened. "Don't be dramatic, Simone. This arrangement works for both of us. You get to live this life." He gestured around the kitchen with its custom cabinets and marble countertops. "And I get to handle my business without dealing with divorce lawyers and custody battles." Simone thought about her grandmother Essie, who'd raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Essie had cleaned houses for 60 years, her hands cracked and swollen from bleach and hard work, but she'd never compromised her dignity for money. "Mama, can I have a snack?" Camille bounced into the kitchen, her natural hair styled in neat twist-outs with colorful beads that clicked when she moved. "Of course, baby girl." Simone opened the refrigerator, grateful for the momentary distraction. As she pulled out apple slices and peanut butter, she caught sight of the family photo magnet to the door. 3 smiling faces at last year's Essence Festival. A lie captured in glossy print. Damon waited until Camille skipped back to the living room before continuing. "Look, I know this one hurts more because I promised about Yasmin. But business is stressful and sometimes you need to stick your dick in your 23-year-old assistant to relieve the stress." The words tumbled out before Simone could stop them. "Simone." "No, Damon. I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done taking your guilt money and acting like it makes everything okay." She picked up the bank transfer confirmation. $10 million. "Do you know what that says about you? That you think my dignity, my self-respect, my love can be bought for $10 million. For the first time in years, Damon looked uncertain. "What are you saying?" Simone walked to the kitchen window that overlooked their perfectly manicured backyard. The pool sparkled in the late afternoon sun, surrounded by the kind of landscaping that cost more than most people's annual salaries. For 6 years she traded pieces of her soul for this view. "I'm saying I won't take your money anymore." She turned back to face him, her voice steady. "I'm saying this arrangement is over." Damon laughed, but it sounded forced. "Come on, baby. Don't be hasty. Think about Camille. Think about the life we've built." "I'm thinking about Camille. I'm thinking about what kind of woman I want her to become. What kind of marriage I want her to believe is normal." Simone's hands found strength she'd forgotten she possessed. "I'm thinking about the fact that my daughter deserves to see her mother fight for herself." "Simone, be smart about this. You signed a prenup. You walk away from this marriage, you walk away with nothing." "The prenup." Another document she'd signed at 22, blinded by love and trust. Another way Damon had controlled the narrative from the beginning. Maybe nothing is exactly what I need, she said quietly. As if sensing the tension, Camille appeared in the doorway again. Daddy, are you staying for dinner? I learned a new song at school today. Damon's face transformed as he looked at his daughter, genuine love replacing his calculating expression. Of course, princess. Let me hear it. Simone watched as Camille launched into a song about friendship and kindness, her pure voice filling the kitchen with innocence that made Simone's heart ache. This beautiful little girl was watching this dysfunction, learning that love meant accepting betrayal as long as the price was right. After Camille finished and received enthusiastic applause, she hugged both parents and returned to her cartoons. Damon turned back to Simone, his voice lower now. You really want to destroy our family over this? I want to save our family. I want to save myself. Simone picked up the envelope full of cash and the bank transfer confirmation. I'm not taking this money, Damon. And I'm not staying silent anymore. She walked to the fireplace in the adjoining living room and threw both the cash and the bank transfer into the flames. $60,000 and a $10 million confirmation burned bright orange, filling the room with the acrid smell of her liberation. Damon rushed after her. Are you insane? Do you know what you just did? I know exactly what I just did. Simone watched the money curl and blacken. I just bought back my self-respect. The silence that followed was deafening. Camille had fallen asleep on the couch, her small body curled around her favorite stuffed elephant, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. Damon stared at the dying flames in the fireplace, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been fear. You have no idea what you've just started. Good, Simone said, surprised by her own calm. I've been sleepwalking through my life for 6 years. It's time I woke up. She gathered Camille gently, feeling the familiar weight of her daughter against her chest. I'm putting her to bed. When I come back down, you need to be gone. This is my house, Simone. No, this is your monument to your own ego. I never had a home here. She paused at the bottom of the staircase. Pack some things tonight. Tomorrow I'm calling Nia. At the mention of her best friend's name, the same Nia Thompson who'd warned her about the prenup, who'd begged her to keep some independence, Damon's expression darkened. Your lawyer friend can't save you from what you signed. Maybe not. But she can make sure you don't bury me either. Upstairs, Simone tucked Camille into her princess-themed bedroom, surrounded by the kind of luxury most children only dreamed of. Hand-painted murals, a canopy bed that cost more than a car, toys that filled an entire wall. All of it bought with the price of her mother's dignity. Mama, why were you and Daddy talking so loud? Camille's sleepy voice broke through Simone's thoughts. Sometimes grown-ups have important conversations, baby girl. Simone smoothed her daughter's hair. But no matter what happens, Mama loves you more than all the stars in the sky. Love you too, Mama. To infinity and beyond. The Toy Story reference, Camille's current obsession, made Simone smile despite everything. This little girl was her motivation, her strength, her reason for finally saying enough. When she came back downstairs, Damon was pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what time it is. I need you to pull the Patterson prenup and review the infidelity clauses. Yes, now. He ended the call and turned to Simone. You want to play hardball? Fine. But remember, I've been playing this game a lot longer than you. This isn't a game, Damon. This is my life. Our daughter's life. Our daughter is going to watch her mother destroy everything I've built for this family out of pride. Our daughter is going to watch her mother refuse to accept disrespect, even when it comes with a price tag. Simone sat on the edge of the sofa where Camille had been sleeping. How many others have there been? What? Besides the 6 I know about. The 6 you paid me for. How many others? Damon's silence was answer enough. Jesus Christ. Simone pressed her hands to her face. How many, Damon? Does it matter now? It matters to me. It matters to my health, my safety, I'm clean. I get tested regularly. I'm not reckless. You're not reckless? Simone's voice rose before she caught herself, remembering Camille sleeping upstairs. You've been cheating on me for our entire marriage and you think being STD-free makes you responsible? I protected you. I protected our family. I could have left, gotten divorced, taken Camille. Instead you chose to stay and torture me with your generosity. Simone stood up, pacing to the window. You know what the worst part is? I convinced myself I was being strong, taking care of my family, making sacrifices for Camille's stability. You are. This life we've built. This life you've built on top of my grave. She turned back to him. I died a little bit every time I took your money. Every time I smiled and pretended to be the perfect wife while you were out there making a mockery of our vows. Damon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened. That's my lawyer. This conversation is over. No, it's just beginning. He moved toward the stairs, then stopped. You know what's going to happen, right? I'll get custody of Camille. You'll get nothing. You have no job, no skills, no money of your own. You've been out of the workforce for 8 years. Each word was designed to wound, to make her doubt herself. For a moment the old fear crept in. The fear that had kept her silent for so long. Then she thought about her grandmother Essie. At 72, Essie still lived in the same small house in southwest Atlanta where she'd raised Simone. She grew her own vegetables, canned her own preserves, and had never needed a man's money to define her worth. You're right, Simone said quietly. I don't have money or a career. But I have something you'll never understand. What's that? I have my integrity back. And that's worth more than all your millions. After Damon left to take his call, Simone found herself alone in the house that had been her prison. She walked through rooms filled with expensive art and furniture, remembering the excited young woman who'd once believed this was her happily ever after. The woman who'd given up her master's degree in social work to become Mrs. Damon Patterson. The woman who'd convinced herself that love meant accepting whatever crumbs of affection were thrown her way, as long as they came with financial security. In Damon's study, she stopped in front of a photo from their wedding day. She'd been radiant, glowing with the confidence of a woman who believed she was marrying her soulmate. Damon had looked equally happy, or at least she'd thought so at the time. Now she wondered if he'd already been planning his escapes even then. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Simone, this is Yasmin. Can we talk? There are things you need to know. Simone stared at the message, her heart pounding. What could Damon's mistress possibly want to tell her? Before she could respond, another message came through. He's not the man you think he is. He's not the man any of us thought he was. At 6 a.m., Simone sat in a corner booth at a small diner in East Atlanta, far from the upscale restaurants where someone might recognize her. She'd barely slept, spending the night researching divorce lawyers and trying to figure out how to start over at 34 with no career and a daughter to protect. The bell above the door chimed, and a young black woman entered, her eyes scanning the nearly empty restaurant. Yasmin looked nothing like what Simone had expected. At 23, she was beautiful but not in the overly polished way Simone had imagined. Her hair was natural, styled in a neat low bun, and she wore simple jeans and a sweater. She was also visibly pregnant. Yasmin slid into the booth across from Simone, her movements careful and deliberate. Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. Simone studied the younger woman's face, looking for signs of the homewrecker she'd expected to hate. Instead, she saw fear, exhaustion, and something that looked like relief. How far along are you? The question slipped out before Simone could stop it. 5 months. Yasmin's hand moved protectively to her stomach. He doesn't know yet. The words hit Simone like a physical blow. Baby. Damon was going to have another child and he had no idea. Why are you telling me this? Yasmin looked down at her hands. Because I found out about the others yesterday. All of them. And I realized I'm not special. I'm not different. I'm just next in line. The waitress approached and both women ordered coffee they probably wouldn't drink. After she left, Yasmin continued. I thought I was in love with him. I thought he was going to leave you for me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He told me your marriage was just for show, that you two lived separate lives. We did live separate lives, Simone said quietly. I just didn't know how separate until recently. He has files, Yasmin said suddenly. On all of us. Photos, personal information, medical records. He keeps them in a safe in his office. What kind of files? Insurance, I guess. Making sure we can't cause him problems. Yasmin met Simone's eyes. I found mine 2 weeks ago when he sent me to get contracts from his safe. That's when I realized this was all planned. Calculated. Simone's coffee grew cold as she processed this information. How many files? At least a dozen. Some dating back to before you were married. The betrayal cut deeper than Simone had thought possible. Before they were married. Before Camille. Her entire relationship with Damon had been built on lies. There's more, Yasmin continued. He's been moving money. Lots of it. Setting up accounts you won't be able to touch. How do you know? I handle his personal finances. Transfer requests, investment accounts, offshore setups. Yasmin pulled a folder from her purse. I made copies of everything I could before I decided to leave. Simone stared at the folder like it contained snakes. Why would you help me? Because I have a daughter too. Yasmin's voice broke slightly. She's 3. I got pregnant with her when I was 19 and her father disappeared. I took this job because I needed health insurance and good pay. I never meant for it to become this. Where is she now? With my mother in Birmingham. I've been sending money home, trying to save enough to bring her here. Yasmin wiped her eyes. But now I realize bringing her around Damon would be the worst thing I could do. For the first time in 6 years, Simone felt something she hadn't expected. Sisterhood. This young woman wasn't her enemy. She was another victim of Damon's manipulation. What are you going to do about the baby? I don't know yet. I just know I can't raise a child with a man who treats women like disposable toys. Yasmin slid the folder across the table. But I know what you should do. Fight him. Fight him with everything you've got. Simone opened the folder and immediately understood why Yasmin had risked everything to steal these documents. Bank records showing millions of dollars being moved to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Investment portfolios she'd never heard of. Real estate purchases in countries she'd never visited. He's been planning for this day for years, Simone realized. Planning for the day one of us would finally say no to his money. They sat in silence for a moment, two women who should have been enemies, united by the shared experience of loving a man who didn't know how to love anyone but himself. I called my friend Nia this morning, Simone said finally. She's a lawyer. A good one. Would you be willing to talk to her? I've already talked to a lawyer. Legal aid helped me yesterday. Yasmin managed a small smile. Turns out I'm not as powerless as I thought. What did they say? They said I have options. And so do you. Simone's phone buzzed with a text from Damon. Hope you're ready to explain to Camille why mommy burned $10 million because she was having a tantrum. She showed the message to Yasmin, who shook her head. That's exactly what he said to Keisha when she tried to leave him 2 years ago. Keisha? The woman before me. He told her she was throwing away her child's future over pride. Yasmin leaned forward. She left anyway. Moved to DC with her son. He tried to destroy her, but she had a good lawyer. Do you have her contact information? I might be able to find it. Would you want to talk to her? I want to talk to all of them. Every woman who's been where I am. Simone felt something awakening inside her, something that felt like power. It's time Damon faced some consequences. As they prepared to leave, Yasmin reached across the table and squeezed Simone's hand. I'm sorry. For my part in hurting you. For taking away your choice to know the truth. You were 23 and pregnant and scared. He was the one with all the power. Simone squeezed back. Besides, you're the one who's finally helping me see the whole picture. What happens now? Now I go home and hug my daughter. Then I call my grandmother and ask her to remind me where I come from. Simone stood up, feeling steadier than she had in years. And then I start building a case that's going to cost Damon a lot more than $10 million. Grandmother Essie's house sat on a quiet street in the Cascade Heights neighborhood, its small front porch adorned with the same rocking chair she'd had for 30 years. The garden that stretched across the front yard was a testament to both stubbornness and grace. Collard greens, tomatoes, and okra growing in neat rows despite the October chill. Simone sat on the porch steps with Camille, watching her daughter chase lightning bugs in the fading daylight. After the meeting with Yasmin, she'd picked up Camille from school and driven straight here, needing the grounding that only Essie could provide. Mama, why does great-grandmama's house smell different than ours? Camille asked, carefully cupping a lightning bug in her small hands. What does it smell like? Like love and cooking. And that soap she makes. Simone smiled. Trust an 8-year-old to put into words what she'd been feeling all day. Essie's house smelled like home in a way the mansion never had. The screen door creaked open, and Essie emerged carrying a tray with sweet tea and her famous peach cobbler. At 72, she moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned to make every motion count, but her back was still straight and her eyes still sharp. Camille, baby, come get some cobbler before the mosquitoes carry you away. Camille released the lightning bug and bounded up the steps, settling onto the porch swing beside her great-grandmother. Essie had been the only constant in Simone's life since her parents died, and now she was becoming the same for Camille. Grandmama, Simone said after Camille was absorbed in her dessert, I need to ask you something. I figured you didn't drive all the way over here just for my cobbler. Essie's knowing smile indicated she'd been expecting this conversation. Though Lord knows it's been too long since you brought this child to see me. I know, and I'm sorry. Damon always has something. Simone stopped herself. No, that's not fair. I let Damon become my excuse for everything. Essie rocked slowly, her weathered hands folded in her lap. What's going on, baby girl? I need to know how you did it. How you raised me by yourself after Mama and Daddy died. How you kept your dignity when things got hard. You talking about that no-good husband of yours? Simone shouldn't have been surprised that Essie had seen through her act, but she was. How long have you known? Baby, I've been watching you disappear a little bit more every time you come around here. You think I don't know what it looks like when a woman's being broken down piece by piece? Camille looked up from her cobbler. What's broken, great-grandmama? Nothing that can't be fixed, sugar. Essie smoothed Camille's hair. Your mama's just remembering how strong she is. After Camille went inside to watch TV, Essie turned to Simone with the full force of her attention. Now tell me what that fool's done this time. Simone found herself pouring out everything. The affairs, the payments, the prenup, Yasmin's pregnancy, the hidden money. Essie listened without interruption, her expression growing more resolved with each revelation. So you finally told him no, Essie said when Simone finished. I burned the money. $10 million and I just watched it burn. Good. Good? Simone stared at her grandmother. Grandmama, that money could have secured Camille's future. Baby, what kind of future you think that child's gonna have watching her mama accept money for being disrespected? What kind of woman you think she's gonna grow up to be? The words hit home because they echoed Simone's own thoughts from the night before. Besides, Essie continued, you think that man was ever gonna let you keep that money if you tried to leave? He probably had ways to take it back you ain't even thought of. Simone considered the files Yasmin had shown her, the evidence of Damon's careful planning. You're probably right. I know I'm right. Men like that don't give you nothing without strings attached. Essie reached over and took Simone's hand. Now, you want to know how I did it? How I raised you and kept food on the table and clothes on your back? Yes. I never forgot who I was before anybody else tried to tell me who I should be. Essie's voice carried the weight of decades of wisdom. Your grandfather, God rest his soul, he was a good man. But even he tried to convince me I didn't need to work after we got married. Said it made him look bad, having his wife cleaning other people's houses. What did you do? I told him I'd been working since I was 12 years old, and I wasn't about to stop because it hurt his feelings. Essie chuckled. Course, I was cleaning houses to put him through college at the time, so he couldn't argue too hard. You put Granddaddy through college? Baby, you think that man could afford Morehouse on his own? I scrubbed floors and took in washing for 4 years to help pay his tuition. Essie's pride was evident. And when he graduated and started making good money, I kept working anyway. Saved every penny I could. Why? Because I never wanted to be in a position where I couldn't leave if I needed to. Turned out I never needed to. Your grandfather was a good man who treated me right. But I always knew I could take care of myself. Simone thought about her own journey from independence to dependence. I had that once. Before Damon. You still have it. It's just buried under years of being told you need somebody else to survive. Essie squeezed her hand. You graduated from Spelman College, baby. You were getting your master's degree when you met that man. You think that education disappeared? It's been 8 years, grandmama. The field has changed. Social work requires current certifications, continuing education. So get them. Start small, work your way back up. Essie's voice brooked no argument. You think I knew how to raise a grieving 12-year-old when your parents died? I figured it out because I had to. Inside the house, Camille's laughter rang out at something on TV, a pure sound that reminded Simone what she was fighting for. There's something else, Simone said. His assistant, the one he's been cheating with, she's pregnant. Essie was quiet for a long moment. How far along? 5 months. And she's willing to testify about his behavior? I think so. She gave me financial documents that show he's been hiding money. Good girl. You're gonna need all the allies you can get. Essie stood up slowly. Come inside. I want to show you something. In the small bedroom that had been Simone's throughout high school and college, Essie opened the closet and pulled out a shoebox from the top shelf. After your parents died, the insurance money went into a trust for you, Essie said, settling onto the bed. But I had some money saved up from all those years of cleaning houses. She opened the shoebox to reveal neat stacks of 20s and 50s, along with several bank books. Grandmama, this looks like $37,000. I've been saving it for you since you got married, figuring you might need it someday. Simone stared at the money her grandmother had saved from decades of backbreaking work. I can't take this. You're not taking it. I'm giving it to you. There's a difference. Essie pressed one of the bank books into Simone's hands. This account is in both our names. Has been for 8 years. You've been planning for this? Baby, I've been hoping it would never come to this. But I've been planning for it since the day you signed that prenup without letting me read it first. The tears Simone had been holding back for days finally came. She sobbed against her grandmother's shoulder, feeling like the scared 12-year-old who'd first come to live in this house. It's gonna be all right, Essie whispered, stroking her hair. You got good people around you. You got that lawyer friend who's been trying to help you for years. You got me. And most importantly, you got yourself. What if I can't do this? What if he takes Camille? Then we fight him. All of us. Together. Essie pulled back to look Simone in the eyes. But let me tell you something, baby girl. That man has been counting on you being too scared to fight. He's about to find out he made a big mistake. Nia Thompson's law office occupied the 15th floor of a sleek downtown Atlanta building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the city. At 32, she'd built her practice from the ground up, specializing in family law for women who'd been underestimated by their opponents. Simone sat across from her best friend's desk, the folder of documents Yasmin had provided spread between them like pieces of a complex puzzle. Nia had been studying them for over an hour, occasionally making notes or pulling up additional information on her computer. This is good, Nia said finally, leaning back in her chair. This is very good. Good enough to challenge the prenup? Good enough to potentially invalidate it completely. Nia picked up one of the bank statements. If we can prove he was hiding marital assets while you were signing that prenup, it becomes fraudulent. The whole thing gets thrown out. Simone felt a flutter of hope. What about custody? That's where things get complicated. Damon's going to argue that you're financially unstable, that you burned $10 million in a fit of rage, that you're not thinking clearly. Nia's expression grew serious. We need to show the court that your decision was rational, that it was about protecting Camille from an unhealthy environment. How do we do that? We build a pattern. We show that Damon's infidelity wasn't just about affairs, it was about control, manipulation, using money to silence you. Nia pulled out a yellow legal pad. I need you to document everything you can remember. Every affair, every payment, every threat, every promise he broke. The prospect of reliving 6 years of humiliation made Simone's stomach turn, but she nodded. There's something else, Nia continued. I've been doing some research on Damon's business practices. There are some irregularities that might interest you. What kind of irregularities? Contract disputes, allegations of bribery, questions about zoning approvals for some of his developments. Nia pulled up files on her computer. Nothing proven, but a pattern of cutting corners and using connections to get around regulations. You think he's doing something illegal? I think he's someone who believes rules don't apply to him. And that same attitude extends to how he treats his marriage. A knock on the door interrupted them. Nia's assistant peeked in. Miss Thompson? There's a young woman here to see Miss Patterson. Says her name is Yasmin? Simone looked at Nia, who nodded. Send her in. Yasmin entered the office looking nervous but determined. She dressed professionally, a simple black dress and flats that made her pregnancy more apparent but also more dignified. I hope it's okay that I came, she said. I have more information. Of course. Nia gestured to the chair beside Simone. I'm Nia Thompson, Simone's attorney. Yasmin Porter. She sat carefully, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. I wanted to make sure Simone got these. She handed Nia a flash drive. Video files from Damon's office security system. I found them when I was cleaning out my desk. Nia inserted the drive into her computer, and after a few moments, video footage appeared on the screen. It showed Damon's office, clearly captured from a hidden camera. He records everything, Yasmin explained. Says it's for security, but I think it's for insurance. Making sure he has leverage if anyone tries to cross him. The first video showed Damon meeting with a man Simone didn't recognize. They were discussing something that involved passing an envelope across the desk. Cash, clearly, though the audio wasn't clear enough to understand the conversation. When was this? Nia asked. 3 months ago. Right around the time the city approved his latest development project. Yasmin's voice was quiet. There are dozens of these videos. Nia fast-forwarded through several files, stopping when she found one that made both women lean forward. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks ago, the day after Simone had found out about Damon's latest affair. On screen, Damon was talking to someone on the phone, his voice clearly audible. "I don't care what it costs. I want that prenup bulletproof. If she tries to fight me, I want to be able to destroy her financially and take the kid." The words hit Simone like a physical blow. The casual cruelty, the way he referred to Camille as the kid, the clear intent to destroy her if she dared to challenge him. "That bastard," Nia whispered. "There's more," Yasmin said softly. She fast-forwarded to another segment where Damon was speaking to someone off-camera. "The prenup was always a trap. I made sure she signed it when she was emotional, when she thought she was in love. She'll never be able to prove fraud." Simone closed her eyes, remembering the day she'd signed those papers. She'd been 3 months pregnant with Camille, glowing with happiness, completely trusting the man she was about to marry. When Damon's lawyer had explained the prenup as just a formality, she'd signed without even reading it thoroughly. "This changes everything," Nia said, her voice filled with fierce satisfaction. "With this evidence, we're not just challenging the prenup, we're going after everything." "What do you mean?" "I mean we're going to prove that your entire marriage was built on fraud and manipulation. We're going to show that Damon never intended to be faithful, that he planned from the beginning to control you through financial dependency." Nia turned to Yasmin. "Are you willing to testify to all of this?" "Yes. But there's something else you need to know." Yasmin looked between Simone and Nia. "I'm not the only one. There are 2 other women who worked for him over the years. Similar situations. Are they willing to testify?" "I think so. Especially now that they know they're not alone." Simone felt something shifting inside her, something that felt like power returning. For 6 years she'd been isolated, convinced that her situation was unique, that she was the only one who'd been foolish enough to accept Damon's terms. Now she was beginning to understand that she'd been part of a pattern, a system he'd perfected over time. "What about the money he's hidden?" Simone asked. "With this evidence of fraud, we can argue that all marital assets should be divided equally, regardless of the prenup," Nia explained. "Plus, if we can prove he used business funds for personal expenses, like those payments to you and the other women, we might be able to claim spousal support from his business assets." "How long will all this take?" "Months, potentially. He's going to fight hard and he has good lawyers." Nia's expression grew serious. "Are you prepared for this to get ugly?" "Because it will. He's going to try to paint you as unstable, greedy, a bad mother. He's going to make every private moment of your marriage public." Simone thought about Camille, about the kind of woman she wanted her daughter to become, about the legacy she wanted to leave. "Let him try," she said quietly. "I'm not the same woman who took his money 6 years ago. I'm not even the same woman who burned it 2 days ago." "Good," Nia said with a smile. "Because we're about to show Damon Patterson what happens when you underestimate a woman who's finally found her power." Sunday morning at Greater Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Southwest Atlanta, Simone sat in the 3rd pew beside grandmother Essie, just as she had every Sunday throughout her childhood. Camille sat between them, swinging her legs and humming along to the choir's rendition of Amazing Grace. Pastor Williams, a man who'd baptized Simone when she was 12 and married her parents before that, delivered a sermon about David facing Goliath that felt like it was meant specifically for her current situation. "Sometimes," he said from the pulpit, his voice carrying the rhythm and power of decades of preaching, "the Lord puts giants in our path not to destroy us, but to show us how strong we really are." After service, as the congregation filed out into the warm October sunshine, Simone found herself surrounded by women she'd grown up with, church mothers who'd known her since she was a child, women who'd watched her bloom and then disappear into a life that had slowly dimmed her light. "Baby girl," said Sister Martha, a woman in her 60s who'd been friends with Essie for 40 years, "we've been praying for you." "Praying for me? Chilly, you think we don't know when one of our own is hurting?" Sister Martha's knowing smile was gentle but firm. "Essie told us you might need some support." Simone looked at her grandmother, who was helping Camille chase butterflies near the church steps. "Grandmama, what did you tell them?" "I told them my grandbaby was going through a rough time and could use some sisterhood," Essie said matter-of-factly. "Nothing more than that." "And that's all we need to know," added Sister Joyce, another church mother. "Except this, if you need childcare, if you need meals, if you need someone to sit with you in court, you got it." Court. Simone hadn't mentioned anything about legal proceedings. "Baby, we've been around long enough to know what a woman fighting for her life looks like," Sister Martha said gently. "Whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone." The simple offer of support brought tears to Simone's eyes. 4 years she'd been isolated in her marriage, cut off from the community that had raised her, convinced that her problems were too shameful to share. "There's something else," said a younger voice behind her. Simone turned to see Keisha Williams, no relation to the pastor, a woman in her early 30s who'd grown up in the church but had moved away several years ago. "I heard you might be dealing with a difficult husband," Keisha said carefully, glancing around to make sure Camille was out of earshot. "What do you mean?" "I mean Damon Patterson. I used to work for him." The name hit Simone like electricity. This was Keisha, the woman Yasmin had mentioned, the one who'd tried to leave Damon 2 years ago. "Could we talk privately?" Keisha asked. They walked to a quiet corner of the church parking lot while Essie kept Camille occupied. "Yasmin found me," Keisha said without preamble. "She told me you were finally fighting back. You're the one who moved to DC? With my son, yeah. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." Keisha's expression was serious. "Damon tried everything to keep me quiet. Threats, bribes, intimidation. But I had something he didn't expect." "What?" "Documentation. I kept records of everything, every payment, every threat, every promise he broke." Keisha pulled out her phone. "And I wasn't the only one." She showed Simone a group chat with 4 other names. Women who'd all worked for Damon at various times, all who'd been caught in similar situations. "We've been supporting each other for 2 years, Keisha explained. "Sharing resources, legal advice, emotional support. When one of us gets stronger, we all get stronger. Why didn't anyone ever speak up publicly? Because who would believe us? Damon's careful. He chooses women who need the job, who don't have other options, who can be painted as opportunistic if they ever try to expose him." Keisha's voice carried the weight of experience. "But things are different now." "How?" "Because you're not his employee. You're his wife. You have legal standing he can't dismiss. And you have something none of us had, legitimate claim to half of everything he's built." Simone felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "You're saying I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm saying you're fighting for all of us. For every woman he's manipulated, every family he's destroyed with his games." Keisha's voice grew stronger. "But more than that, you're fighting for your daughter. And for every little girl who needs to see that women don't have to accept abuse just because it comes with a price tag." The conversation was interrupted by Camille running over, her Sunday dress slightly grass-stained but her face bright with joy. "Mama, great-grandmama says we can have lunch at her house and she'll teach me how to make cornbread." "That sounds wonderful, baby." Simone smoothed her daughter's hair, thinking about the legacy she wanted to leave for this precious child. "Keisha," she said as they walked back toward the church, "would you and the others be willing to testify if it comes to that?" "We've been waiting for someone with the power to make it matter," Keisha replied. "The answer is yes." That afternoon at Essie's house, 3 generations of women worked together in the small kitchen. Essie guided Camille through measuring flour and cornmeal while Simone chopped vegetables for greens, a ritual that connected her to countless Sunday afternoons from her childhood. "Mama," Camille said as she stirred the cornbread batter, "why haven't we been coming to great-grandmama's house for Sunday dinner?" The innocent question hit deeper than intended. "I'm sorry, baby girl. Mama made some mistakes about what was important. But we're here now," Camille said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "That's what matters." As they sat around Essie's small dining table, the same table where Simone had done homework, eaten countless meals, and learned what it meant to be part of a family, Simone felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. Her phone buzzed with messages from Damon, increasingly angry texts about her irresponsible behavior, and demands that she come home and discuss this like adults. She turned the phone face down without responding. "He's getting desperate," Essie observed, having seen the messages before Simone turned the phone over. "Good," Simone said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "Desperate? This is your home," Essie said firmly. "It always has been." That evening, as Camille slept in the same twin bed Simone had used as a teenager, Simone sat on the porch with her grandmother, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. "Grandmama, what if I can't do this? What if he finds a way to take Camille? Then we'll fight him with everything we've got. But baby girl, you're stronger than you know. You always have been." Essie rocked slowly in her chair. "You think I didn't want to give up sometimes when you came to live with me? 12 years old, grieving your parents, angry at the world. You never showed it. Because that's what women do. We find our strength when others need us to be strong." Essie reached over and took Simone's hand. "Your daughter is watching you. She's learning what it means to be a woman from how you handle this. Make sure you're teaching her the right lesson." As if summoned by their conversation, Camille appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Mama? I had a bad dream. Simone lifted her daughter onto her lap, feeling the familiar weight and warmth that reminded her what she was fighting for. Tell me about it, baby girl. I dreamed that Daddy was mad and he took me away from you. Camille's voice was small and frightened. That's not going to happen, Simone said firmly, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Mama's going to make sure you're safe and loved no matter what. Promise? I promise. As Camille fell asleep in her arms under the starlit sky, Simone made another promise to herself. She would become the woman her daughter needed her to be, whatever it cost her. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta's Fulton County Superior Court building hummed with tension as attorneys, court staff, and a few observers filed in for what would be the opening hearing in Patterson versus Patterson. Simone sat beside Nia at the plaintiff's table, wearing a navy blue suit that projected both professionalism and strength. Across the aisle, Damon sat with his legal team, 3 lawyers from one of Atlanta's most prestigious firms, led by William Hutchinson, a silver-haired man known for his ruthless tactics in high-profile divorces. This was Simone's first time seeing Damon since she'd left the house a week ago. He looked every inch the successful businessman in his tailored charcoal suit, but she could see the tightness around his eyes, the slight clench of his jaw that indicated he was less confident than he appeared. All rise, called the bailiff as Judge Patricia Morrison entered the courtroom. Judge Morrison was a black woman in her late 50s, known for her no-nonsense approach and intolerance for manipulation. Be seated, Judge Morrison said, settling behind the bench. This is a hearing regarding temporary custody, support and asset preservation in the matter of Patterson versus Patterson. Counsel, please state your appearances. Nia stood first. Nia Thompson representing the petitioner, Simone Patterson, Your Honor. William Hutchinson representing the respondent, Damon Patterson, Your Honor, came the response from across the aisle. Miss Thompson, this is your motion. Proceed. Nia approached the podium with confidence. Your Honor, Mrs. Patterson is seeking temporary custody of the couple's 8-year-old daughter, Camille, as well as temporary support and an order preventing Mr. Patterson from hiding or disposing of marital assets. And the basis for these requests? Mr. Patterson has engaged in a pattern of infidelity, manipulation, and financial control that has made the marital home an unsuitable environment for the child. Furthermore, we have evidence that he has been systematically hiding marital assets in anticipation of this proceeding. Hutchinson was on his feet immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making inflammatory allegations without foundation. This is a hearing, not a trial, Mr. Hutchinson. Ms. Thompson may present her arguments. Judge Morrison turned back to Nia. Continue. Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Patterson has documentation showing that over the course of their marriage, Mr. Patterson has repeatedly committed adultery and then attempted to buy her silence with substantial cash payments. The most recent payment offer was $10 million, which Mrs. Patterson refused. A murmur went through the courtroom. Judge Morrison raised her hand for silence. Furthermore, Nia continued, we have evidence that Mr. Patterson has been moving marital assets to offshore accounts and has created a hostile environment for the child by bringing his infidelity into the family home. Mr. Hutchinson, your response? Hutchinson approached the podium with practiced ease. Your Honor, Mrs. Patterson's allegations are the desperate claims of a woman who has become accustomed to an extremely luxurious lifestyle and now fears losing access to her husband's wealth. The $10 million she claims to have refused was actually a generous attempt by Mr. Patterson to provide for his family's future during a difficult time. And the infidelity allegations? Unproven gossip and speculation, Your Honor. Mr. Patterson is a successful businessman who works closely with many people, including female employees. Mrs. Patterson has chosen to interpret normal business relationships as something more sinister. Simone felt her jaw clench at the dismissive way Hutchinson characterized years of documented betrayal. Moreover, Hutchinson continued, Mrs. Patterson has displayed erratic and destructive behavior, including burning $10 million in cash and bank transfer documents in front of the couple's minor child. This kind of instability raises serious questions about her fitness as a parent. Judge Morrison made notes as both attorneys spoke. Ms. Thompson, do you have evidence to support your claims? Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to present documentation of Mr. Patterson's financial transfers, as well as testimony from individuals with direct knowledge of his behavior pattern. And witnesses? We have several witnesses prepared to testify, including a current employee of Mr. Patterson who has direct knowledge of his conduct. Hutchinson stood again. Your Honor, We object to any testimony from disgruntled employees who may have ulterior motives for making false claims. The witness's motivations can be explored on cross-examination, Judge Morrison replied. Miss Thompson, call your first witness. We call Yasmin Porter. Yasmin entered the courtroom looking composed but nervous. She dressed conservatively, her pregnancy visible but not emphasized. As she was sworn in, Simone could see Damon's expression change from confidence to concern. Miss Porter, Nia began, what is your relationship to the respondent, Damon Patterson? I was his personal assistant for 18 months. I had a personal relationship with him. Can you describe the nature of that personal relationship? He told me his marriage was essentially over, that he and his wife lived separate lives. He said he was planning to file for divorce but wanted to wait until his daughter was older. Yasmin's voice was steady. We became involved romantically. Are you currently pregnant? Yes. 5 months. The courtroom was completely silent. Is Mr. Patterson the father? Yes. Hutchinson was writing furiously, preparing his cross-examination. Miss Porter, during your employment with Mr. Patterson, did you have access to his personal financial records? Yes. I handled his personal banking, investment transfers, and other financial matters. Did you observe any unusual financial activity in recent months? Yes. Starting about 6 months ago, Mr. Patterson began moving large amounts of money to offshore accounts. He told me it was for tax purposes, but the amounts were much larger than previous years. Nia presented several documents. I'm showing you exhibits A through F. Can you identify these? Yasmin examined the papers. These are bank transfer records I copied before leaving my position. They show transfers totaling approximately $15 million to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Why did you copy these records? Because I discovered I wasn't the first woman in this situation. Mr. Patterson keeps files on all his relationships. When I found my file, I realized this was a pattern, not a romance. Did you personally witness Mr. Patterson make payments to his wife in connection with his extramarital affairs? Yes. I prepared several bank transfers at his direction, always after what he called domestic situations. He told me it was easier to pay her to stay quiet than deal with divorce proceedings. Hutchinson's cross-examination was aggressive but careful. He painted Yasmin as a scorned woman seeking revenge, a young employee who'd misunderstood business transactions and professional relationships. But Yasmin held her ground, calmly correcting his mischaracterizations and referring to specific documents and dates, stretched back years. When it was his turn to present evidence, Hutchinson called a private investigator who testified about Simone's erratic behavior, including photographed evidence of her burning money. He also called a financial expert who argued that the offshore transfers were legitimate tax planning strategies. But the damage was done. The pattern of behavior was clear, and Judge Morrison's expression grew increasingly stern as the evidence mounted. Based on the evidence presented today, Judge Morrison said after both sides had concluded their arguments, I am granting temporary custody of Camille Patterson to her mother, with supervised visitation for the father. I am also ordering that all marital assets be frozen pending resolution of this matter. Furthermore, she continued, I am deeply troubled by the evidence of systematic deception and financial manipulation presented here today. Mr. Patterson, you are ordered to provide a complete accounting of all marital assets, including any offshore accounts, within 30 days. As the courtroom began to empty, Damon approached Simone for the first time since the proceedings began. You have no idea what you've started, he said quietly, his voice carrying a threat that made Nia step closer to her client. Yes, I do, Simone replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I've started the end of your ability to control women with money and fear. For the first time in their relationship, Damon looked uncertain, like a man who'd finally met an opponent he couldn't buy or intimidate. As they left the courthouse, Simone felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of fighting back and winning. 2 weeks after the court hearing, Simone stood in the small office space she'd rented in a converted warehouse in East Atlanta. Boxes of files surrounded her desk, evidence of the life she was building from scratch. The sign on the door read Second Chance Family Services, a non-profit organization she was creating to help women and families in transition. Mama, this place smells funny, Camille announced from where she sat at a child-sized table in the corner, coloring while Simone worked. It's just old building smell, baby girl. It'll get better once we fix it up. The truth was, Simone loved the smell, the scent of possibility, of something being built rather than inherited. Using the money Essie had saved for her, plus a small grant she'd applied for. She was creating something that was entirely her own. Her phone rang and Nia's name appeared on the screen. "We got the financial disclosure," Nia said without preamble. "And? You're going to want to sit down." Simone lowered herself into her desk chair, gesturing for Camille to keep coloring. "Damon's net worth is closer to $400 million, not the $200 million we thought. He's been hiding assets for years, not just during your marriage." The number was staggering. 400 million? And that's just what he's disclosed. The forensic accountant thinks there's more. Nia's voice carried excitement. "Simone, even with the prenup, you're looking at a substantial settlement. Enough to set you and Camille up for life." A month ago, the news would have made Simone dizzy with relief. Now, sitting in her modest office space, working on something she'd built with her own hands, the money felt less important than she'd expected. What about the other women? The ones he manipulated? That's trickier. They weren't married to him, so they don't have direct claims on marital assets. But if we can prove he used business funds for those payments, they might have grounds for civil suits. "I want to help them," Simone said without hesitation. "I figured you might. I've been thinking about that." Before Nia could elaborate, the office door opened and Jerome Washington walked in carrying coffee and what looked like architectural plans. Jerome was the director of the community center next door, a soft-spoken man in his mid-30s who'd been helping Simone navigate the neighborhood and understand the needs of the families they both hoped to serve. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and hands that showed he wasn't afraid of hard work. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, setting the coffee on her desk. "I brought those floor plans you asked about." "Thank you." "Jerome, you remember my friend Nia?" "Of course. The brilliant lawyer who's taking down the bad guys." Nia laughed. "Something like that. Jerome, can I ask you something? What do you think about the idea of using settlement money to fund legal services for women who can't afford representation?" Jerome set down the plans and considered the question seriously. "I think it would change lives. Half the women who come to our center are trapped in situations they can't afford to escape." "That's what I was thinking too," Simone said, an idea taking shape. "What if part of my settlement went to creating a legal aid fund? Specifically for women who've been financially controlled or manipulated." "You want to turn your divorce settlement into a non-profit?" Nia asked. "Part of it, yes. I want to make sure what happened to me, and to Yasmin and Keisha and the others, doesn't happen to women who don't have the resources to fight back." Jerome smiled, and Simone felt a familiar flutter in her chest. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd found herself looking forward to his visits, enjoying their conversations about community development and social justice. It had been so long since she'd talked to a man who saw her as an equal partner rather than someone to be managed. "That's beautiful," Jerome said quietly. "Using your pain to prevent other people's pain." "Mama," Camille called from her corner, "can Mr. Jerome see my picture?" "Of course, baby girl." Camille proudly showed off her drawing, a building with Mama's office written in shaky letters across the top, surrounded by stick figures holding hands. "That's wonderful, Camille," Jerome said, crouching down to her level. "I especially like how you made everyone holding hands. That shows community. Mama says community means we take care of each other. Your mama is very smart." Simone felt warmth spread through her chest as she watched Jerome interact with her daughter. Damon had never shown that kind of natural ease with Camille, never got down to her level or took her artwork seriously. After Jerome left to return to the community center, Nia raised an eyebrow at her friend. "He's nice," she said innocently. "He's a friend. And a neighbor. Nothing more." "Wow. And the way you light up when he walks in the room?" "I light up because he's helping with the renovation plans." "Sure you do." Nia grinned. "For what it's worth, I think it's good to see you interested in someone who sees you as a person instead of a possession." That evening, back at Essie's house, 3 generations of women sat around the kitchen table working on different projects. Essie was teaching Camille how to snap green beans while Simone reviewed legal documents and grant applications. "How was your day, baby girl?" Essie asked Camille. "Good. I got to see Mama's new office and draw pictures, and Mr. Jerome said I was artistic." "Mr. Jerome, huh?" Essie glanced at Simone with knowing eyes. "He's the community center director," Simone said without looking up from her papers. "Wow. And is Mr. Jerome married?" "Grandmama. I'm just asking. A woman needs to know these things about her neighbors." Camille giggled. "Mr. Jerome is nice. He talks to me like I'm a real person, not like Daddy used to." The innocent observation hit Simone harder than she'd expected. She'd been so focused on the legal and financial aspects of her divorce that she hadn't fully considered how Damon's treatment of Camille had affected her daughter. "How did Daddy talk to you differently? Like I was just a little kid who didn't understand anything. Mr. Jerome asked me about my drawings and listened to my ideas about the office." Essie reached over and squeezed Simone's hand. "Children see more than we think they do." That night, as Simone tucked Camille into bed, her daughter asked the question she'd been dreading. "Mama, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" Simone sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Yes, baby girl. Daddy and I are getting divorced." "Because he was mean to you?" "Because we couldn't figure out how to be happy together anymore." "But that doesn't change how much we both love you." "Will I still get to see Daddy?" "Yes. The judge said you can visit with him, and someone will be there to make sure you're safe and happy." Camille was quiet for a moment. "I like living here with you and great-grandmama better." "Why?" "Because you're not sad anymore. At the big house, you were always sad even when you smiled." Once again, Simone was reminded that children noticed everything. Camille had been watching her mother disappear for years, just as Essie had said. "I'm working on being happy again," Simone said. "And part of that means making sure you grow up knowing that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness." "Like how Mr. Jerome treats people?" "Yes, exactly like that." As Camille drifted off to sleep, Simone realized that her daughter was learning lessons that would shape her entire understanding of relationships. The divorce wasn't just about ending a bad marriage, it was about modeling for Camille what it looked like to value yourself enough to demand better. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jerome. "Saw the light on. Hope the grant application is going well. This community is lucky to have you." Simone found herself smiling as she typed back, "Thank you. The community is lucky to have people like you too." It was a small exchange, but it reminded her of something she'd forgotten during her marriage. What it felt like to be appreciated for who she was, not what she could provide or tolerate. For the first time in years, Simone fell asleep thinking about the future instead of surviving the present. The final court hearing arrived on a crisp November morning, 3 months after Simone had first burned Damon's money and walked away from his manipulation. The courtroom was more crowded than before. Word had spread about the case, and several reporters sat in the gallery, drawn by the story of a wealthy man's systematic exploitation of women. Simone entered the courthouse wearing a black suit that projected confidence and dignity. Beside her, Nia carried boxes of evidence that would paint a complete picture of Damon's years of deception. Behind them, Yasmin walked with her head held high, now 7 months pregnant and serving as a living reminder of the consequences of Damon's actions. At the defendant's table, Damon sat with his expanded legal team. The stress of the past months showed in his face. He'd lost weight, and the easy confidence that had once defined him seemed frayed around the edges. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. Judge Morrison had spent weeks reviewing the evidence, financial records, and testimony from both sides. As she settled behind the bench, her expression was stern and focused. "This court will now hear final arguments in the matter of Patterson versus Patterson. Given the complexity of the financial issues and the serious allegations that have been raised, I want to address several matters today." She turned first to Damon's legal team. "Mr. Hutchinson, I have reviewed your client's complete financial disclosure, including the amended versions submitted after our forensic accountants discovered additional assets. The pattern of concealment is troubling, to say the least." Hutchinson stood slowly. "Your Honor, my client's financial arrangements were complex but legal business strategies." "Mr. Hutchinson," Judge Morrison interrupted, "your client moved over $50 million in marital assets to offshore accounts while his wife was unaware of their existence. He systematically paid money to silence women he had exploited, using both personal and business funds. This goes far beyond complex financial strategies." The judge turned to the gallery where several women sat together, Keisha, Yasmin, and 3 others who had come forward during the investigation. "This case has revealed a pattern of behavior that extends beyond a simple divorce proceeding. Mr. Patterson used his wealth and position to manipulate and control women, creating a system that ensured his actions would remain hidden." She opened a thick folder. "Ms. Thompson, before I rule on the divorce settlement, I want to address the criminal referral I am making today." A murmur went through the courtroom. Simone felt Nia tense beside her. "The evidence presented suggests that Mr. Patterson may have violated several laws, including tax evasion related to unreported payments, potential money laundering through his offshore accounts, and possibly racketeering in his pattern of systematic exploitation. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation." Damon's face had gone pale. This was clearly not something his legal team had anticipated. Now, regarding the divorce settlement, Judge Morrison continued, I am finding that the prenuptial agreement is invalid due to fraud. Mrs. Patterson signed that agreement without full knowledge of her husband's assets or his pattern of infidelity, which had already begun before their marriage. Simone felt a surge of vindication. Furthermore, the evidence shows that Mr. Patterson never intended to honor his marriage vows and used the prenuptial agreement as a tool to ensure his wife's compliance with his deception. Judge Morrison looked directly at Damon. Mr. Patterson, your actions have not only harmed your wife but have created a hostile environment for your daughter. The supervised visitation I ordered will continue indefinitely, with the possibility of review only after you complete counseling and demonstrate genuine change in your behavior. She turned to Simone. Mrs. Patterson, I am awarding you 50% of all marital assets, including the previously hidden offshore accounts. Additionally, you will receive spousal support of $100,000 per month for 5 years, as well as full custody of Camille with the visitation restrictions I mentioned. The financial award was more than Simone had dared to hope for, but she found herself thinking immediately about how to use it responsibly. There is one more matter, Judge Morrison said. Mrs. Patterson, I understand you have expressed interest in using part of your settlement to establish a legal aid fund for women in similar situations? Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to create a foundation that provides legal representation for women who have been financially controlled or exploited by their partners. I find that to be a commendable use of these funds. The court will support any efforts to prevent other women from experiencing what you and others have endured. As the hearing concluded, Simone felt a mix of relief, satisfaction, and determination. Justice had been served, but more importantly, she had the resources to help other women escape similar situations. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around Simone and her legal team. She had prepared a brief statement. This case was never just about money, she said, her voice clear and strong. It was about establishing that women cannot be bought, silenced, or controlled, regardless of how much money is involved. I hope our experience encourages other women to speak up and seek help when they need it. What will you do with the settlement money? One reporter asked. I will ensure my daughter's future is secure, and then I will use these resources to help other women who find themselves in situations where they're being financially manipulated or controlled. No woman should have to choose between her dignity and her security. Yasmin stepped forward. I want to say something too. She looked directly into the cameras. I made mistakes and I hurt Mrs. Patterson through my involvement with her husband. But I learned that we're not each other's enemies. We're all victims of the same man's manipulation. I hope other women in similar situations will find the courage to speak up and support each other instead of competing for scraps of affection from men who don't respect any of us. As the crowd dispersed, Simone found herself standing with the other women who had testified against Damon. These women, who should have been rivals, had become allies in seeking justice. What happens now? Keisha asked. Now we make sure this never happens to anyone else, Simone replied. We build something better. That evening at Essie's house, 3 generations of women celebrated quietly. Camille was in bed, exhausted from the excitement of the day but happy that the scary court meetings were finally over. I'm proud of you, baby girl, Essie said as they sat on the porch in the cool November air. You turned your pain into purpose. I had good teachers, Simone replied, taking her grandmother's weathered hand. You taught me that dignity can't be bought or sold. And now you'll teach Camille the same thing. As if summoned by their conversation, Jerome appeared at the garden gate, carrying a bouquet of flowers from the community center's garden. I hope it's not too late to stop by, he said. I wanted to congratulate you and see how you're doing. It's perfect timing, Simone said, surprised by how genuinely happy she was to see him. Jerome handed her the flowers, simple mums and marigolds, nothing expensive or flashy, but beautiful in their authenticity. These are lovely. Thank you. I also wanted to tell you that the community center board approved your proposal. They're excited about partnering with your foundation. Over the past month, Simone and Jerome had been developing plans for her legal aid foundation to work closely with the community center, providing integrated services for families in crisis. That's wonderful news. Essie stood up slowly. I think I'll go inside and check on Camille. You two have planning to do. As her grandmother disappeared into the house with a knowing smile, Simone felt both nervous and excited to be alone with Jerome. How are you really doing? He asked, settling into Essie's abandoned rocking chair. I'm hopeful, Simone said, realizing it was true. For the first time in years, I'm excited about the future instead of just trying to survive the present. That's beautiful. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood settling into evening. Jerome, Simone said finally, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you interested in having dinner sometime? Just us, no community center business or foundation planning. His smile lit up the gathering darkness. I've been hoping you'd ask that for weeks. Why didn't you ask me? Because I wanted to make sure you were ready. You've been rebuilding your entire life. I didn't want to complicate that. I think I'm ready to let someone uncomplicated instead. As the evening deepened around them, Simone realized she was no longer the woman who had accepted money for her dignity or settled for scraps of affection. She was becoming someone new. Someone who knew her worth and was ready to accept nothing less than genuine love and respect. The transformation wasn't complete, but for the first time in years she was excited to see who she would become. 1 year later, Simone stood in the spacious offices of the Second Chance Foundation, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as families arrived for the center's first anniversary celebration. The foundation had grown beyond her wildest dreams, providing legal aid, counseling, and support services to over 200 women and their families. Mama, look. Camille called from across the room, where she was helping arrange flowers with several other children. At 9 years old, she had blossomed into a confident, joyful child who understood that she was part of something important. Beautiful work, baby girl, Simone called back, marveling at how much they had both changed. The past year had been a whirlwind of building, learning, and healing. The foundation's offices occupied the first floor of a renovated building in East Atlanta, with Jerome's expanded community center on the second floor. Together, they had created a comprehensive support system that addressed the interconnected needs of families in crisis. Are you ready for your big day? Nia asked, appearing beside Simone with a cup of coffee and a proud smile. I think so. It still feels surreal sometimes. What? That you went from being financially controlled to running $1 million foundation in less than 2 years. When you put it like that, it sounds impossible. Not impossible. Just proof of what you were always capable of when you weren't being held back. Through the windows, Simone could see people streaming into the community center for the celebration. Many of them were women the foundation had helped, former clients who had become advocates, volunteers, and friends. Simone, called a familiar voice. She turned to see Yasmin approaching, now a mother of a beautiful 6-month-old daughter named Hope. Yasmin had become the foundation's client services coordinator, using her own experience to help other women navigate the legal and emotional challenges of leaving controlling relationships. How's Hope doing? Simone asked, admiring the baby sleeping peacefully in her stroller. She's perfect, and she's going to grow up knowing what healthy relationships look like because of what we're building here. Behind Yasmin came Keisha and 2 other women who had testified against Damon. They had all become part of the foundation's extended family, proving that healing could happen when women supported each other instead of competing. Is everything ready upstairs? Simone asked. Jerome's putting the finishing touches on the display about the foundation's first year, Keisha reported. You're going to be amazed at how much we've accomplished. As they prepared to head upstairs for the celebration, Simone's phone rang. The caller ID showed Damon's number, something she hadn't seen in months. I'll just be a minute, she told the others, stepping into her private office. Hello, Damon. Simone. His voice sounded different, less commanding, more uncertain. I wanted to call before I heard about it somewhere else. The criminal trial starts next month. The district attorney had indeed pursued the case, charging Damon with tax evasion, money laundering, and operating what prosecutors called a pattern of exploitation that bordered on racketeering. His lawyers had been trying to negotiate a plea deal for months. I know. Nia keeps me updated. I also wanted to say, I wanted to apologize. To you and to Camille. Simone was quiet for a moment, processing the words she'd once desperately wanted to hear. I appreciate that, Damon. But apologies need to be followed by action. Are you getting the counseling the court ordered? Yes, twice a week. It's difficult. Admitting what I did, how I treated people. Good. That's the first step toward becoming someone Camille might want to have a relationship with someday. How is she? She's thriving. She's confident, happy, and surrounded by people who value her for exactly who she is. And you? How are you? Simone looked out her office window at the celebration beginning upstairs, at the community they had built, at the life she had created from the ashes of her marriage. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. After ending the call, Simone rejoined the group heading upstairs. The community center had been transformed for the celebration, with displays showcasing the foundation's work, photos of families who had been helped, and testimonials from women who had rebuilt their lives. At the center of it all stood a simple banner, "From survival to strength, 1 year of second chances." "Ladies and gentlemen," Jerome's voice carried across the crowded room, "please welcome the founder of the Second Chance Foundation, Simone Patterson." The applause was thunderous as Simone made her way to the small stage. Looking out at the crowd, she saw faces that represented every part of her journey: Essie in the front row, beaming with pride; Nia standing with other lawyers who had joined the foundation's legal aid network; Yasmin holding baby Hope; Keisha and the other survivors who had become advocates; families who had been helped by the foundation's services; and Jerome, whose steady support had helped her believe in love again. "A year ago," Simone began, "I was a woman who had forgotten her own worth. I had spent so many years accepting less than I deserved that I had stopped believing I deserved anything at all." The room was completely quiet. But sometimes the most broken places in our lives become the foundation for something beautiful. "My marriage taught me what I wouldn't accept, and my divorce taught me what I would fight for." She looked directly at Camille, who was watching from the front row beside Essie. "I learned that our children are always watching, always learning about love and respect and dignity from how we allow ourselves to be treated. I wanted my daughter to see what it looks like when a woman values herself enough to demand better." The applause interrupted her for a moment. "This foundation exists because no woman should have to choose between her safety and her security. No woman should have to accept abuse because she can't afford to leave. No woman should have to negotiate her dignity for financial stability." She paused, thinking about all the women who had shared their stories over the past year. "We've helped over 200 families this year, but more importantly, we've proven that when women support each other, when we stop competing for scraps and start building something better, we can create change that ripples through entire communities." The celebration continued for hours, with food, music, and the kind of joy that comes from meaningful work and genuine community. As the evening wound down, Simone found herself on the community center's rooftop garden with Jerome, looking out over the lights of Atlanta. "Penny for your thoughts," Jerome said, settling beside her on a bench surrounded by herbs and vegetables he'd helped plant. "I was thinking about transformation," Simone said. "How a year ago I thought my life was ending and it turns out it was just beginning." "Any regrets? About Damon? About the divorce?" Simone considered the question seriously. "No. I regret how long it took me to find my courage, but I don't regret finally using it." Jerome took her hand, a gesture that still sent warmth through her chest after months of dating. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice carrying a nervousness that made her heart skip. "What's that?" "I know we've been taking things slow, making sure Camille is comfortable, making sure you're ready." "Jerome. Let me finish," he said with a smile. "I love you, Simone. I love your strength, your compassion, your determination to turn pain into purpose. I love how you light up when you talk about the foundation's work. I love how you are with Camille, how you're teaching her to be strong and kind." Simone felt tears beginning to form. "I love you too," she whispered. "I want to build a life with you. A real partnership where we support each other's dreams and face challenges together. I want to help you raise Camille and maybe someday have more children together." He pulled out a simple ring, not the ostentatious diamond Damon had given her, but a beautiful band with a single stone that caught the light from the city below. "Will you marry me?" Simone looked at the ring, then at Jerome's hopeful face, then out at the community they had built together. This wasn't the fairy tale ending she had once imagined, with wealth and luxury and social status. This was something better. A real partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. "Yes," she said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "Yes, I will marry you." As Jerome slipped the ring onto her finger, Simone realized that this was what happy endings really looked like, not perfect circumstances, but the courage to choose love over fear, dignity over security, and authentic partnership over convenient arrangements. Below them, the city sparkled with possibility, and above them, the stars witnessed a woman who had found her way home to herself and to a love that honored every part of who she had become. 18 months later, at a simple ceremony in Essie's garden, surrounded by the community that had supported her transformation, Simone married Jerome in front of their friends, family, and chosen family. Camille served as maid of honor, Essie gave the blessing, and the Second Chance Foundation's clients and staff filled the garden with joy and celebration. As they exchanged vows they had written themselves, Simone promised to continue growing, to keep fighting for women who needed advocates, and to build a life based on mutual respect and shared purpose. Jerome promised to support her dreams, to help raise Camille with love and wisdom, and to create a home where everyone felt valued and safe. And in the front row, 9-year-old Camille watched her mother marry a man who treated her with the respect and love she deserved, learning lessons about relationships that would guide her for the rest of her life. The woman who had once accepted money for her silence had become a woman who used her voice to change the world, one family at a time.